Hi guys. It's Alana. Who else is here with us?
Stephanie.
Shalom, Leo.
Hi everyone. Okay. So in yesterday's call, we're at Seder Academy. We're trying to help everybody figure out Passover on the fly here. In yesterday's call, of the questions that we weren't able to answer right away, there are basically two big categories. One was about Zoom, and one was about a list of things that are needed for Passover. So on Zoom, a bunch of you had a couple of technical questions, including the 40-minute limit. We are actually have been in touch with Zoom, and we are going to get answers for you for that. We are also going to run our own Zoom Seder over the weekend. And then what we're going to do on Monday is give everybody a master tip sheet of how to run a Zoom Seder. So that's the first thing. And the second thing is in terms of the list, Stephanie has a list that we've made for you guys. You'll see that it's like, has a bunch of essentials that you're going to need, a bunch of things you can improvise, and then a bunch of things you can add if you want to get fancy. So Steph, can we share that maybe in a way that everyone can see? Can everybody see that? Yes? I hope so. What else? So the next thing is Leo, how are you feeling today? Are you good?
I am feeling just as my beard looks, wild, unruly, and happy.
Excellent. Whatever that means. Steph, you good?
I'm good.
Steph.
You're good.
Okay. Steph's
it's 4 o'clock somewhere.
Okay.
I will say, since I'm seeing at least one question pertaining to Zoom, would it shock you to know, guys, that the chief product officer of Zoom is an Israeli who went to the Technion?
Right.
So I figured this out yesterday and got his email and wrote to him and said, we have scores of people here awaiting all kinds of wisdom. And so hopefully we will hear also some tips from the inside pertaining to this magical platform.
Great. There's also a question from our friends at the Jewish Book Council. Hi guys, which is actually echoing a couple of questions from yesterday, which are about places where people can order Passover food, prepared food. The thing that would be helpful for us is if people who are interested in that could tell us where you are roughly, like either a zip code or even a state. Because it'll make it a little easier for us to give you guys suggestions. Are there any other questions right now that are not Zoom related or technology related?
By the way, has this song been in anyone's head? Zoom golly golly golly, Zoom golly golly.
It had not been
making a comeback, I think.
And now I guess.
Our colleague Gabe told me that his son's Hebrew school on Zoom started out this week by singing that song over Zoom.
Alan, you asked. At least if we can say okay, we just got it. Alan asked if there's an online Haggadah. There are a few. We're going to have a list up online soon. In addition to tablets, Haggadah will have a PDF version of it that we'll be able to share with you guys next week. Brian's asking how we see the Passover preparing list. Can somebody share it or somebody explain?
That's in the chat section.
So Brian, if you go to the chats, you can see it's something called tablet Passover list.
These lists of resources will all live on our landing pages, bit.ly/Tablet Seder Academy. And you can also get that from Tablet's website as well.
Excellent. Okay. All right. Any other?
Clicking on it does nothing.
Brian's saying he sees that, but clicking on it does nothing.
It works.
I don't know why. It's opening for me. I don't know why. Anyway, we'll figure it out. Brian, it sends an email to Haggadah with 2 G's, HAGGADAH @tabletmag.com, and if we have to, we'll just cut and paste it into an email for you.
Right. And Cheryl also wrote to say, copy and paste it if you can't open the link for whatever reason.
Yeah,
Thank
we'll
you,
do
Cheryl.
it.
Google
Just send
Docs.
us an email.
Oh, Brian
That's,
got it.
Oh.
Got it.
oh, yay, Brian, good. Couple things, just want to repeat that again. Haggadah@tabletmag.com if any specific questions that you want to ask us directly or stories you want to tell us, private things you want to share, we're here for it. Any other I see a couple of questions, most of them are still related to Zoom and technology. Anything else, guys?
Oh, you sent it, but I didn't watch it.
Okay, so what we now want to do for you today is when we were putting together the list, the thing that we noticed that we think people need to start preparing for, especially because so many of the places where we're ordering food from online have delays, we want you guys to start thinking about charoset. You can make whatever you want for the festive meal. I'm sure there are dishes that are important to you. But maybe Liel can tell us a little bit about why charoset is a thing that you really should start planning for now, mentally and practically.
Well, being, first of all, one of the only foods that you're commanded to eat, being the one food that you're commanded to eat that people are actually very excited about because it's sweet and wonderful and it's not horseradishy and or fishy and or anything else. It is a delight and by far everyone's favorite. And also, in many cases, and you will soon see, right, our charosets around the world interactive map, hopefully early next week. It contains multitudes. There are so many traditions and so many ways for so many Jewish communities to do it in different styles, but a lot of the ingredients that you may want may not be available to you right now. Mine, for example, calls for dried cherries, which I do not see happening under these circumstances. It would have to be something like craisins, but whatever it is, you may want to stock up well in advance just for that. So,
and some of them are, for those of you who may be making Passover for the first time yourselves, charoset can be a really fun way to, it's both potentially easy, unless you're making the Persian kind, which is like 9 gajillion ingredients. But it's easy and it feels very symbolic and there's enormous meaning packed into a little food. So what we want to do now is share with you, as Liel said, on Monday on Tablet, we have an interactive map launching of charoset recipes from around the world. That map will have ingredients and directions for all of those recipes, I hope. But for those of you who want to start planning early, we have a document that actually will show you every single one of those too. Hold on, Erin, I'm going to answer your question in a sec. So if you guys want to, can you just open up charoset recipes? If anybody has any questions, if you want to just start scanning that document and seeing which one you might want to make, and then just scan it and see if you have any immediate questions. You can also, we'll obviously be here all week, so don't worry about it if you don't have them today. Erin, Steph, do you want to take Erin's question? Can't hear you though.
I muted myself for like the first time in my life. Erin says, I'm a college student living alone and feeling very daunted by the prospect of doing Passover alone on my own. I have a box of matzah, but other than that, I'm feeling completely lost. Any tips or general advice for being alone and trying to tackle a minimalist Pesach? I think you're actually in a group with a lot of people. I think there are a lot of people who are alone right now, whether they are all sort of across the spectrum of ages. There are people who live alone, right? And we're not going to other people's houses for this Passover. So basically, as Alana said yesterday, like if you look around, that's who you're sharing Passover with. Like I have to ask my cat to do the 4 questions, I think, because he's the youngest one here. So I think you should embrace it. I know that sounds hard. I think that a lot of virtual Seders will be happening, and we're going to be pointing people towards resources for how to find your own virtual Seder. So I think that you actually can feel connected to other people that night. And I also would say that, you could keep things small. We had a lot of questions coming to us about, I'm not making matzo ball soup for 30 people. I'm making it for 3 or 2 and trying to sort of adapt those things. And I think that just getting sort of like your own portion of all this and just having a special meal by yourself in community with other people, I think that's what it is. I mean, I think a lot of us know Passover as this sort of like extravaganza, right, where there's courses and mains and appetizers and amuse bouches at Liel's house. So basically, I think this is just very pared down and very meaningful. I think even what's going on, it's so symbolic.
I would also add, I mean, I think that the first question you should ask yourself is whether you would want to join a Zoom Seder, or whether that feels too weird. Because if you feel like it wouldn't be weird, and I think it won't be this year. I mean, I think a lot of us are going to be doing it. So I think it'll feel good. Then it's just a matter of finding which one you want to join. And I think that you're going to, like Stephanie said, I think if you join a Zoom Seder, you're going to find a lot of other people. I don't think it'll feel lonely. If you don't, if the prospect of a Zoom Seder really kind of feels just too foreign and too weird, I mean, I think that there are ways of being meditative and having a night to yourself, to think and read and feel and maybe look at pictures, think about the things that made your Passover in years past, and then where you might want to be next year. I think it can be introspective.
And I love what Amy is saying, which is why can't each of us invite those alone to join us? And if you think about it, that's what Passover is for, right? This idea, let all those who are hungry come and eat. And Alana, you've made this point recently before all of this, which is that by the time we get to that, that's like you're already seated at dinner when you read that passage from the Haggadah. And what we're able to do this year is say, who is alone, who is hungry, so to speak, and we can expand our notion of what it means of inclusion, really, because it's so easy to invite someone to your Seder. You just open your laptop. So I think that's something, and we'll try to facilitate that. I'm not sure the best way, but basically say, like, maybe have a way of emailing us if you're looking for a Seder or if you're hosting one. We'll figure that out closer to the day, but if we could be a resource in any way. I also want to respond to Bonnie, who says, last night I was on a conference call where someone said that joint singing on Zoom doesn't work. That is a problem. I mean, it's hard, even if because like, I know we talked about this yesterday, we're not interrupting each other, which is very hard for us to do. But with your family, there's so much overlapping conversation that it's a little weird and disjointed on Zoom. And I think singing might be hard, but it's sort of is what it is, right? I think you'll sort of get.
But also the other thing that I think may end up being, it's not going to be perfect, but one of the things that you're going to see on Monday when we give you sort of very, very detailed Zoom tips is one of the things that we're definitely going to suggest is giving people parts. So it is going to be weird. I have a terrible singing voice. I don't want to sing by myself, but that's maybe what I'm going to do this year. What?
Sorry, I'm interrupting you. I think that there's a few people saying, but singing together is great. Why can't you? I think it's just that on Zoom, you can't, you don't get the experience, because if we all talk at once, I can't hear everyone. So we can certainly all sing together and should. But I don't know.
That's a good idea. I think I might try that. It wasn't very
the sound delay. So basically, I mean, look, we'll talk about that on Monday. I think it's just, it's going to be a little different this year, and we sort of have to embrace it, I think, instead of sort of begrudge it. But yeah, I think it's sort of all about the feeling behind it. And I love the idea that people who might be alone always during Passover are actually going to be able to be in community with people because of these virtual tools.
Yeah, I think this is going to be one of those things where we're going to have to lean in to we're going to have to accept the deficiencies of this moment and then see whether or not there are unusual benefits to it and whether we can capitalize on those and make it an interesting, memorable year that maybe we all hope we never have to do again, but we still have really fun memories of that year when we all had to do Pesach over Zoom. So I just feel like we should just understand the anxiety we're having and understand that it feels weird and then just go with it.
I have a question for the two of you. I mean, you guys host typically a Seder at least each year. Are there things that are different this year that you're almost looking forward to? I mean, are there things, Liel, I know you've been very deep in homeschooling your kids. Are there things that you're sort of taking from this experience that you're going to use at these Seders?
Well, that's a great question, and this is probably not the perfect format for long meditations on spiritual things, but I'm
It's just not
struck.
singing.
Correct. I'm thrilled to not sing with a lot of other people. I'm just reminding myself, especially in these times, that the Passover Seder kind of happens in three timelines, right? It happens in the timeline of right now. You're sitting in the room together, you're talking. It happens in the past because you're commemorating this great big miracle. But in many ways, it's also a story about the future. It ends with, Lashana Babi Yerushalayim, next year in Jerusalem. It's a reminder that the miracle is never finished, that the work is never finished, that the miracle happens again in every generation, and it's kind of up to us to bring it. So I think this is a year to focus on that, to focus on the notion that our job right now is to overcome difficulties and err in the wilderness, just as our forefathers had, and that there's always a promised land at the end of that story.
I mean, I think, my feeling is some version of that, in that, like, there isn't such a heavy lift this year for finding meaning in this. Like,
No.
it's all there, right in front of us. And we know what we want liberation from in the immediate sense. And we don't have to start working really, really hard to figure out what it is that we want from our lives. I think we now all have been forced face to face with the things that feel important and valuable.
I agree. Now, here's another thing. Just if you read the Haggadah, we have to be really honest. It is not the world's most compelling kind of, sort of best-selling story. There are other ways to have written that story that would have made it much more kind of like linearly coherent to people.
Greatest story. You're so wrong.
Instead of beginning and then ending, going into some 5 rabbis talking about something and then some homiletics somewhere. I think what this strange book that we have become so accustomed to kind of reading, pro forma just to get through it so we could get to the food. I think what it kind of really invites us to do this year is to dive into its strangeness, because what it really is a sort of DIY story. You have to take the elements of the story that are very great, but are all there, and kind of put it together yourself. And this year, since there are no 700 people running around and no, interruptions and also special circumstances, I think this is the year to really do it. Jump into find just one paragraph in the story that kind of intrigues you, maybe study it in advance, and then make your own meaning, which is in large part what the Haggadah encourages you to do within the context of the large communal joint story.
And I think it's funny. I'm not done yet. No, I don't. I want to keep going. I think the idea of being in exile, that was never really something that made so much sense necessarily. You read the story and you're like, oh yeah, my ancestors long ago, whatever. And this idea of enslavement, we can't leave our homes really. I know that it's obviously not the same, and I'm not complaining. I'm well, and we're privileged enough to be able to do our work from home and to have these seders with the people in our homes. But it is really interesting. And the other thing that I've been thinking is that I've always sort of said I wanted to host a Seder. I've said that to my husband Ben before, and I said, but our apartment's too small. We can't have everyone here. I can't cook for 10 people. How many people we would want to have? How am I going to make all those matzo balls? Never made a matzo ball before. And in a weird way, this year I can. And you're right, Alana. It does take a little bit of that pressure off, because this year we're doing what we can, right? The bar is a lot lower. And that means that we can find meaning in everything, I think. So instead of sort of being sad that I'm stuck here at home, I'm actually, I'm kind of excited. I'm throwing my own Seder. It's just sort of like a test run. It's like a beta test of a real grown-up Seder, because the food might not be great, but we're doing the best we can with what we have right now. And I think that is going to be, for everyone who experiences this, a deeply, deeply and profoundly meaningful experience. And we'll always know that there was this one very strange Passover where we couldn't be together, where we couldn't connect in the way we usually can, and yet we made it through.
Okay, guys, we're gonna go, but I just want a couple of reminders and a little overview. Next week, we're definitely gonna do Zoom tutorial, tips for how to run a Zoom Seder or participate in one. We are also going to potentially bring in some other guests to help us out. So maybe the people who could help us, like, for example, if you guys want to learn how to make the perfect matzo ball, or if you want to know how to make one of our 10 Plagues cocktails. We can bring in people who can actually help us. The greatest thing for us would be if you guys just let us know what you feel you're going to want help with next week, if you can think about it. You can write to us again at haggadah@tabletmag.com.
You want to spell Haggadah, Alana?
Haggadah.
Thank you.
That's one of the first rules of working a tablet. You have to learn how to spell Hanukkah and Haggadah.
Right.
But you get 6 months
I'm
in between.
leaving. I'm going.
What about
Okay, thank
Shonda?
you.
How do we spell that one?
Yeah, goodbye.
No one knows.
Goodbye,
Shabbat shalom, everyone.
Thanks for coming.
Bye.